Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. Last we left off, we're in the middle of a Derek day. So without further ado, let's hop into this. What do you want to do
Wait,
next? Wait, no, what do I want to do next, right? Good job, it's all up to you still. Derek and you joined in with the laughter filling the park. Force of habit. Don't worry, I can keep reminding you, it's Derek's day. Derek's day, huh? I like the sound of that. He cast his focus up to the sky. Derek traced the edges of his jaw using his thumb and pointer finger. It reminded you of the way Mr. Schwartz would stroke his beard thoughtfully and respectfully. Derek was missing the facial hair, but the effect was the same. What does Derek Suarez want to do? We've hit the roller coaster and the face painting stall. I'm not huge on the refreshments here, honestly. They've got bikes and scooters, but you can do that almost anywhere. Top of that, time's running out before we have to leave, so he began going somewhere and then stopped himself. That was also a pattern of his. When Derek spoke again, it was quiet, wistful more for himself than the conversation.
well,
Probably shouldn't stall any longer. That's not possible. What? I'd tell you this time, but before I do, let's ride the Ferris wheel. Okay. Now I'm intrigued. Lead the way. Alright, let's go. Derek glanced around, getting the lay of the land. You wandered far from the coaster and entirely lost touch with where you stood in the park. But your new target was the tallest structure for miles around. There was no trouble in determining the path towards it. Together you made another crossing of the boardwalk. The line for the Ferris wheel wasn't as jam-packed as the first ride you'd stopped at. Far more guests could fit at a time. It was simply less of a draw to the high-energy guests attending the park. You couldn't get on immediately, but the wait wouldn't take long. Derek's attitude standing there was in stark contrast to how he behaved, creeping crawl of the coaster. His feet were firm on the ground. A ride attendee got to the door for both of you. That didn't mean you couldn't add your own touch of this. Please, you first.
thanks.
How kind. He promptly climbed in. You carefully got in up on the 2 steps into the car after. Derek sat on the right bench on the same side he picked the last time you were there. Sat on the bench next to Derek. Yes, next to Derek. Derek squished his shoulders up and around the sides, his face in childlike excitement, and welcomed you to the seat with a grin. He put an OK sign for the attendant. Then the employee closed the tiny elevated room so you were fully encased inside. It muffled the raucousness so much you couldn't believe the entire world had suddenly faded away. Glancing out the window showed that all too well. Look at him. Just as nice as when he was a kid. The car rocked forward and you watched as the ground grew further away. You and Derek were completely unreachable there. For the duration of the ride, it was only you and him. It was as freeing in a way. Derek seemed to think so too, because it got him to talk without reservation. I know we didn't get to do all that much here. We're finishing up and the sun hasn't even started to set. But even still, this has been the best trip to the boardwalk I've had in years. He poked a small chunk of glitter on his cheek that clumped together and stuck out from the rest.
You're seriously great.
I hope you know I really appreciate you're always looking out for me. I'm happy to. You deserve to have someone spoil you. You're welcome. I feel the same way about you. Yeah, I know. You smiled back at him. You deserve to have someone spoil you. The Ferris wheel continued to go round on its set unchanging path, always forward, never back. Even in the brightness of a summer day, and a shadow fell over Derek's face. Well, you succeeded in making me happy. Is it alright if I ask you had fun too? I'm having a wonderful time. That is so like you, you chuckled. You're a very sweet man. You're not understand. Of course, any time with Derek's a good time. He really shrugged. Any time with Derek's a good time. That's good to know. His gaze dropped and his voice was low, heavy with the weight of emotional strain.
Thank you.
Thanks to you, I finally got to feel like I did when I was a kid for a little while. That means a lot. It's what I've been chasing since I got here. The big park, all dark and empty. Derek's painted confession. The scene all flashed through your mind. His words rung out when he felt he'd lost so much and never could get it back. Maybe that wasn't entirely true after all. Soft smile on his face was exactly the same as the boy you once knew. Hey, remember that time you stayed over at my place, camped out in the living room, and we talked about the future and our dreams? Our Father's Day thing might have been more of a bombshell, but I haven't forgotten the rest of that adventure. Yeah, same. It's such a great plan a decade ago, huh?
Oh man.
Now we're here and I have no idea what I'm doing. Derek pressed himself into the heavy metal wall behind seat and slumped down into it. I wonder what my 13-year-old self would have done if he called a psychic and they told him where his life would have actually gone. Maybe he demanded a refund. Come on, Derek. Everyone knows you're too polite to ask for your money back. You're right, but I would have thought about it. I have made a great speech in my head, but how is it only fair to not have to pay for a reading like that? Derek's voice faded out, replaced by the sound of his fingers tapping against the seat. One after another, they played a rapid beat like a fluttering of heart.
This sucks.
Sucks that there's no way to actually know what's going to happen in the future, huh?
Forget it.
At least today was fun. A good break from having to be grown-ups. Yeah, he sighed. It was a good day. I wonder when we'll see each other again. Thanks again for letting me this. Boo, I want to be kids forever, you joke. Thanks for letting me do this. He wanted to appreciate that you had the chance to come for a short trip. Notice nothing could last forever, and you had a great run. It's nothing. Good grun staring at you head on. Hey, you should come by again sometime, whenever you want to. Or can, anyway. Whenever? You sure about that? Yep.
Leave it to me.
It's my apartment, and I'm an adult. I can say that. Ari Payne is allowed to visit all the time. He declared it proudly with a fox air of haughtiness. If his pitch hadn't been a little higher, the statement would have been a fairly accurate imitation of Liz. It was all more than a little silly, but the smile growing on your face stopped short of becoming full. Derek's bold-faced confidence was only pretend. Regret remained hidden all behind every smile. I'm not going to be too busy for you anymore. I figured out what my actual priorities are way later on than I should have, but I did.
I swear.
Part of it is being someone you could actually count on again, so my door is always open.
The truth is...
Since you've been here, I finally started to see a future I want to have. Since I thought about it more and more, and I keep coming back to the same thing. I don't want to be this far away from you. That was all along, the entire time you'd been staying with him, and even before you'd actually arrived. Those were the words Derek had been holding back. He didn't restrain them any longer. I was hoping to be closer to when I lived in the next city over. Being neighbors was my dream. I wasn't totally kidding about that. But I wasted all these years we have been at manageable travel distance from each other. I pushed off facing you for real until I reached a perpetually moving goalpost. I regretted that. I still do. I don't know if I'll ever stop if it'll ever stop pissing me off. Derek caught that long-held anger began to carry him. He squeezed his eyes shut and forced a shaky thought through steadying exhale out. That's not what matters, though. I can't redo the past. I've got to focus on what I can do. And what is that? I could move. I don't know. Live next to you now. The clawing darkness of the past faded under the shining hope of a better tomorrow. Why not, right? It's not as if I'd be canceling any amazing plans. I gave up everything before you got here. So this would be the best time for it. Don't have to renew my lease, and the career ideas I do have could come with me. I can start them somewhere else. Or I don't know. You're with Cove, but if you've been wanting to come back to this area for more than a vacation, I could keep the apartment and you could move in. Maybe he'd want to move closer too, but I'd be up for whatever you are. We could be there for each other, day by day. For the first time, Derek had expressed the whole and honest truth of what he wanted for his life, for himself. It wasn't about his family, or only for your sake. But even then, Derek couldn't help pre-compositioning his preferences. He doubted the appeal of his hopes to anybody other than himself.
Don't worry about that.
I get it. If you think it'd be overkill, or you're still worried about how it'd work out, it wouldn't have to be forever. He winked cheekily and familiar. I'm not asking you to marry me again. Maybe it'd last for only a year and then we'll have new plans. I'm gonna need time to figure out how long term either way.
So
that's it. Derek's new plan. What do you think? I think it's perfect. I'll help you house hunt. Or if you wanted to know, Cove wouldn't mind if you stayed with us. Derek, I respect what you want to do, and I don't want to stop you. Are you kidding? I'd kill to live in that apartment. Would it really be alright for me to live with you? I'd love to visit again, but I don't think it's a good time for either of us to move. Would it really be alright for me to live with you? That was almost too good to be true. You could be with Derek in a great place right by your family and friends. You'd hope for it yourself for a moment, wonder why something that perfect hadn't come up before. In the next instant, you remembered why. Neither of you pictured the other feeling the same way. You imagine Derek was pursuing his sports dream and never would interrupt that. He saw himself as unworthy of others' acceptance until an abstract level of success was attained. But those days were behind both of you. The answer you gave and dazzling smile it gave Derek was proof of it.
Really?
Really? You nodded with complete resolve. There wasn't any need for doubt. Absolutely, Derek Suarez. Woo! His arm stood up as he whooped victorious cheer. Unfortunately, the Ferris wheel car wasn't built for that kind of celebration, and his fist cracked directly against the metal ceiling of the cabin. Ah! But he laughed heartily, shaking off his smarting knuckles. Nothing was going to bring him down. He started to ramble off moving logistics and preparations that need be made. Informing the landlord that there would be another occupant was paramount, but he was positive she wouldn't mind, and you'd be able to keep the key he'd given you from the start, of course. And it was dry, grown-up responsibility stuff, yet it sparked more excitement in you than any amusement park ever could have. Derek was able to rein in the frenzied babbling long enough to extend a hand towards you intently. You understood what he meant by that. The place, the time of day, the terms, so much of the situation was entirely different from the first time Derek had made you an offer, but the feeling behind them remained the same, an earnest desire to not be separated. Ugh! You took hold of one another secure and shook.
It's a deal.
We actually shook hands! Look at that! Oh, you can see the freckles and things.
It's a deal.
Deal. Wow. He slowly let you go before staring down at his hands in wide-eyed disbelief, as if it wasn't his. Ugh! This man. What I'm wondering is when it's gonna let me tell him that I love him. So let's get back into this. But it was. Derek had taken his own life into that hand of his. He believed he wouldn't lose hold of it ever again. I actually did it. He scuffed his fingers curled into a fist, lifted his intense green eyes to your face. Derek had grown, he had held himself back, and he'd changed, and he'd remained himself. He developed into an adult. He should be proud of that, and he was still the boy you'd met 10 years ago. It was all true. All at once, it made you happier than you could say. I'm feeling better about the future already. Thanks, Ari. Derek had gained genuine confidence. He trusted his own decisions now that they were made to seek the best instead of to hide from the worst. Nothing in the world was more heartening than that. I am too, Derek. Derek satisfyingly stretched out his arm in front of him. He had learned his lesson about moving them higher. Well, I might not really know what I'm doing with my own life, but at least I've got a nice apartment in a great location with a balcony, my favorite people all around. I'll take that as a win. You shook with the swaying of your personal cabin of laughter, too. Derek snickered to himself, but clung to a piece of prior seriousness.
Phew.
It's a relief, though. Feeling good about sticking around here is more progress than I had a few days ago. 23 is not that old. There's plenty of time left to work it out. You've got things to figure out. You've got things more figured out than you think. The world is our oyster, Derek. I absolutely agree. You don't need your whole life plan anyway. You got more figured out than you think. Maybe. You're usually right about stuff. For the first time in his waking hours, Derek was completely at peace with himself. Your spirit had flown straight into the moon like a pair of shooting stars, though physically you were still in the gentle drifting cabin. Its position was on the decline. When the wheel turned, continued to slow until it came to a full stop. Derek's joy was replaced with utter horror in an instant.
It's...
Shit. He threw himself to the window and pressed his face against it, and Derek could only watch in stunned disbelief as the first of the cars unloaded lower down. The ride was coming to an end. When your cabin arrived at the bottom, you both took your turn to dismount. The same attendant gestured towards the tall frame exit gate, and thanked you for coming. Doing as instructed, you left the Ferris wheel behind you. Derek picked up his pace, bounding with each step to get ahead. He didn't go further into the crowd. Instead, he jumped right in front of you. You paused, foot mid-air. All of a sudden, a quite solid obstacle in your path. His arms were folded, his eyes intent. Sup, Ari? Wow, it's you. We haven't seen each other in forever. Derek grinned boldly as you curiously peered down at him. Would you want to ride the Ferris wheel with me? What? You blinked and put your foot down as Used as you were to repetition in relation to the Suarez family, that one caught you off guard. Whether this was Derek's impulsive side or his secret long game plan side, you couldn't tell. Maybe a bit of both. Yeah, yeah, what a surprise. Derek chuckled self-consciously. Shock had to have been clear on your face. It didn't stop him. He rambled on without taking your breath. But honestly, I know we just did that and had a whole big talk, but there was something else I planned on saying. I thought I'd be able to go over it all, and then it went so fast, but I can't say it any other place, even though it's important, the most important.
I swear.
If we can do this one more time, I'll never ask anything again. Well, I'd ask you something, but it would be different, I swear. Then his entire face closed. He finally sucked in air through his nose. When his eyes opened, they were wide, pleading. Of course he'd have pro puppy dog face. It was Derek's genes. Thank you, I'll tell you when we're there. A brand new promise lingering in your heart, you looped around the width of the Ferris wheel to get in line once again. When the line thinned and you reached the front, you got into another car. Derek took his usual seat on the bench, set towards the right hand side of the entrance. He gestured a hand towards the left bench, asking you to sit across from him. It'd be nice if I could face you more easily, was his reasoning. This had to Sirius if he didn't want to welcome you right by his side again. But you took a spot alone on the metal panel. Whatever you want, Derek. I feel like I'm about to have a job interview. He sat quietly. You had an idea of what this might be going. It was thrilling. An idea of where this might be going. It was nerve-wracking. Thrilling! Your heart thumped hard. Your stomach dipped. Were you on the Ferris wheel again or the roller coaster? The sensation made more sense for the latter. Derek didn't fill the space with chatter as you were used to. Instead, he made use of his requested vantage point to watch you intently from across the room as the rest of the cars filled with guests, each having their own story that led them to the Ferris wheel that day. In a way, you and Derek were only one of thousands, nothing special at all. The attendant who let you on the ride hadn't even seemed to realize you'd been there minutes before. But in another sense, you and him meant a great deal. You were both irreplaceable depending on who was looking. The way he watched you with unflinching focus, it was apparent which view he held. The silence was all-encompassing, but the strength of his gaze kept your rapt attention. It was only once the Ferris wheel began to slowly spin without interruption that Derek truly began what he set out to do. He placed his hands on his sides, fanning his fingers across the bench for balance, and leaned towards you, physically showing he was ready to open up.
You're seriously great.
Before anything, I want to thank you. Derek Day was awesome, and you're awesome for doing that. Derek was happy and bright, as you always pictured him in your mind. It was difficult to imagine him as overly serious, even when you'd seen it in person a second before. But it's not even just that. Today isn't the half of it. Doing chores and running errands, making me feel so much less shitty over how I quit. And I can also mention real quick how cool it was that you cared about me and what I was thinking instead of pointing out that I was irresponsible wasting such a great opportunity. That was a big deal to me. But the smaller things matter too. You stayed up even later to help me when I absolutely had to put those groceries away right then. And you've always got to try and take the door opening move away from me. He laughed without reservation, talking about you had a way of bringing out a boyish enthusiasm. And then on top of all that, you're good to my family too, even when we get dramatic and have our issues. They're a major part of my life, always will be, so seeing how you get along with them is, well, let's say it's tips the scale for this even more. A special something danced inside his bright green eyes. It was as if he realized for the first time what he was actually doing.
Well,
I don't want to leave anything out, but I should get to the point. If I die of embarrassment, I ran out of time again. Derek Wing made you crack a smile. He had a way of bringing out a pure joy in you, too. But his expression soon shifted. Derek put his game face on. It's gotta be now. He's gonna tell us he likes us, isn't he? His voice was low, dangerously close to inaudible. You didn't want to miss any of
the
it.
truth is,
Ari, my dream hasn't changed. My actual dream, not the dream of being the best at some sport, so I didn't feel like a failure. I mean, the one I told you about right here almost 10 years ago. That evening came back to you in an instant. It was the first time you'd rode this Ferris wheel, and you had a very similar view. Then Derek had been right where he sat now, but so much smaller, and his baby brother asleep in his lap. The sunlight had been fading, shadows pressed in around you, and Derek whispered his hidden hope while you were almost all alone. Picturing that scene and reliving his words, he said the first drop of the roller coaster inside you was coming. Derek had no idea what was going on with your thoughts, or if he did, he wasn't letting it psych him out. He was someone who did what he set his mind to, and determination was resolute. That always been what I really wanted, even when I was pretending it wasn't. I want someone on my side who's there for me as much as I am for them. A partner in life. You told me back then I had that in you, and I couldn't believe it, literally. Admitting that was just only shake in a single-minded declaration. He had to pause and offer an apologetic smile. I honestly didn't think it could be true. It was nice to hear, but it wasn't gonna I wasn't going to hold you to it, which was extremely dumb because you were the person I was thinking about the entire time I was saying it. Derek's hands flew to the sides of his head and gripped it. He wanted to shake himself for that. That's why I told you, not somebody else. The muscles in his legs tensed and he pressed his sneakers heavily against the movable floor. There was nowhere to go, and that was the only reason he stayed in his seat. So instead, he used his energy to pull his radiating emotions into a single point and put that in words. I couldn't admit what I felt then, or even hope you felt it too, but not anymore. So for once and for all, I'm gonna say what I always thought. Derek's premeditated proposition came into full effect as he stared you down straight on.
I love you.
I love you, Ari. Ah! Oh my god! Oh my god! He said he liked us! It took so long! It took so long! I want us to be on a team, to face problems together. Not because there was no one else, but because there is no one else. And you can do what you want. With that, what you want. Derek let out a sigh and slumped in his seat. How you'd react, he didn't know, but he already accomplished something for himself simply by having the courage to tell you. That was it. You met his gaze steadfast. That was it. You were you went right over to sit with him. That was it. You kissed him. That was it. You hugged him. That was it. You took his hand in yours. I'm really, really sorry, Derek. We're going to kiss him. That's it. The distance wasn't needed anymore. You broke the cardinal rule of the theme parks. Don't get up from your seat while the ride is in motion. Your feet were unsteady in the dangling cabin, but your nerves were even. After a couple hunched over semi-waddling steps, you dropped onto Derek's landing, and your lips slid against him. His skin heated up with tingling goosebumps. You pushed yourself off and glanced down at him. After a wonderful moment together, he managed to help you into an actual seat on the bench, embracing you in the process.
Are you serious?
Alright, so that definitely means what I think it means. Derek spoke with incredulous awe. As obvious as it was to both of you, it didn't seem possible. The feelings you'd come to know had sparked more alive in you than ever before. I love you too. I love you, Derek Shores. Yes, it does. I mean it. I meant it then, and I mean it now. Better late than never, I'll take it. I can't think of anything better than being there for you. Better late than never, I'll take it. I like that, but I don't want to. I meant it then, and I mean it now. You're a wonderful man. I'll always be on your side. Those words froze Derek solid. He stopped breathing. He didn't blink, and the stasis lasted long enough for you to worry over his oxygen levels. His face might have been blue under all that red in his cheeks. A deep breath through a crooked grin was what finally broke his rock-solid features.
Oh, man.
An unexpected perk of picking this spot is that I can't get up and sprint around for 10 minutes. That would have been a great reaction, but probably exactly what I would have done if I could. That's exactly like you. I could go for a run myself right about now. You gave his legs an understanding pat. You sighed with equal parts affection and long-suffering. You're too cute. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't do that, you laughed. I could use a run too. I want to just go. He let out a shaky breath, completing the process of breathing only once over an entire minute. Well, since a nice jog around the boardwalk is out of the equation, I'll have to do something else. His eyes were all light. For one example, I could kiss you. I like that. That works. You nod rapidly. About how you opened your arms, like I said. I'm sorry. That's not something I really want to do. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. He took your hands in his without hesitation. You gripped him back and leaned closer. He met you halfway. Your lips touched, first lightly, then more confident. His were pulled up at the end of the entire time. The first time you'd ever kissed Derek was when you were barely teenagers, hanging out in an old park, making up plans for the future, as well as you could then, by making the backup deal. The second was only minutes ago. You were way to once again tell Derek that you wanted to be his and for him to be yours. Both were important, but this one, a reciprocal kiss born of mutual affection, was the very best of them. However, you had a feeling there'd be many chances to outdo it in the days, weeks, and years to come. In the thrill of the moment, Derek's excitement got the better of him, and his legs kicked up and smacked his heels down against the bottom pane of the seat. Clattering sound vibrated the tiny metal room. It reminded you of the precariousness of your position. Derek got the same wake-up call. You were still in the middle of a Ferris wheel ride. Bouncing off the walls wouldn't be the best plan.
Whoa!
He pulled your mouth apart, keeping you squeezed against his chest, and glanced around wide-eyed to check the situation. Then he giggled joyfully, no less carefree. I take it back. This wasn't a conventional place for a confession at all. If I really was going to be prepared, as I claim, I'd have picked somewhere that wouldn't rock if you moved around. And one that didn't have a 10-minute time limit. You both laughed. Derek shook his head. The whole thing. Oh, well, it was unavoidable. It was? Yeah. The cabin you were in was once again looked over up and down, but Derek's motivation was indifferent. He wasn't checking for damage or to see if it was about to knock you both out of the sky. He was nostalgic, thinking... nostalgically drinking in the scene he found himself in. Honestly, it's pretty embarrassing, but I didn't want to ask you out any place other than here. Or really, I didn't think I'd have the fortitude in a different location. It's pretty scenic, right?
Well...
And mainly, it's the place where I started seriously imagining my future to be with you. Nico was there, so I couldn't ask if you liked someone or if you wanted to get married in the future if we were still single. I'd end up doing that in the park a little later. But it was here when I happened in my head. I promised myself that the two of us, if the two of us ever ended up truly alone in a Ferris wheel, I'd spit it out before the ride was over. It was a secret deal I made with myself, a backup to the backup. That never happened until now, partly because going out to the boardwalk isn't exactly practical. It's even farther away than the water park, so it never came up. The other half is because I avoided this exact set of circumstances. I've avoided all Ferris wheels everywhere. If it came to this, I'd have to break my vow and actually do it.
Oops.
And the joke here is, after all, that I still didn't get to do it on the first time. We had to go around twice. Humor softened into endearment, and chuckles faded into gentle whispers. But we made it. Through all the years and all of the miles between us, we got back here, and I think that counts for something. It was a beautiful sentiment, though of course he was Derek Suarez, so his childish spirit couldn't stay quiet for long.
Nice.
And I did do it, and now we're together.
Wait.
Ooh. Oh wait, there's one final thing we should probably talk about, or talk about again, really. Do you want to stay in the place you have for now? Would moving be moving too fast? Now we're in different kind of relationship than a few minutes ago when that was decided. No, it wouldn't. I'd want to do it faster. I still want to do it. Yeah, let's worry about that later down the road. I'd like to think about it more. You nodded with his caution. No, it wouldn't. I want to do it faster. The only thing better than living with friends is living with my boyfriend.
I got you.
We've got a deal again, or still whatever. We've got it. Thanks, Eric. We shifted and snuggled to get into the angle that optimized closeness and comfort. Derek linked his restless legs with yours to keep them content with something other than a wild bucking. A freshly made couple enjoyed the comfort of the other's presence and bliss, though not for long. The ride once again came to its end much too fast. Derek's taste, he sighed with great tragedy as the first of the passengers began to dismount on the lower wheel. You were of the same mind. Staying on Cloud 9 with Derek for many more revolutions would have been perfectly welcome. When your car was at the bottom, you and Derek returned to the Earth side by side, and as you had left it. However, nothing was the same. The world was an entirely different place. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, remember to hit like. That way, you know you're enjoying the content I'm making. Remember to hit subscribe. That way, YouTube brings you back here to see what happens next. And I won't take up any more of your time. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye bye.